Good. Well, we're right at the top of the hour. We better start before the jokes go any further. Hello to everybody. Jasmine, Matthew, Ford. I thank you for joining. This is going to be a fun webinar, a fun presentation. And actually, before I jump into that, let me just introduce the folks on the call here. You guys know me. I'm Jeremy. Maybe you know me, maybe not. I'll introduce myself in just a second. Wayne is a sales engineer over at Passler, or PRTG, as most people know the company. Amanda, also in sales at PRTG/Passler. And we put this presentation together. Now let me see how. I'm going to do this a lot on back and forth screen sharing. So see how fast I can do that. Okay, poof. We put this together. This actually came out of a lot of thinking and brainstorming back and forth, both internally at Veeya, which I'll explain who Veeya is in just in a moment, and at Passler, as we were thinking about fun presentations that we could do. First and foremost, before I go any further, this is our slogan. This is the way. And that's, by the way, what the name Veeya means. And this was long before the Mandalorian stole it. If those of you Mandalorian fans out there, this is the way. So Veeya actually means the way. It's a play on words for the way Veeya. We are a managed service provider that does IT very specifically, building technology services. And I've always said, this is the way. This is the way that we do IT. So the topic of the conversation is why I'm moving, and I should say we're moving to hosted PRTG. So before I get into the exact explanation, let me just do a quick introduction, make sure you all know who I am, who Veeya is, and talk about the webinar format in just a second. My name is Jeremy Chara. I'm the CEO of Veeya. We're a managed service provider out on the West Coast of the United States, really focused on the territories of Nevada, Arizona, and Texas, with a heavy play on Arizona and Texas right now, on the charter school community. We focus on education, but even that was too big. We started saying, okay, let's build on charter schools, because those of you that know my other life, which is teaching technology, I believe that education can be done differently. And when I see charter schools, I'm like, you nailed it. And they just have a different bent on approaching public education. And I'm all about that. So that's where we align, and we really supported them. So we're about 35 employees, again, serving charter schools out in Arizona, Texas, and thousands and thousands, probably approaching about the 10,000 user mark that we're supporting on a day-to-day basis. We do it well, we do it efficiently, and we do it relationally, connecting with people. So I put this slide here for myself to really just remind you, I thrive on interaction. I can talk all day, but I would love, if you have any questions, feel free to chat them in or ask questions. There's actually a Q&A tab in Zoom. And I just so you know where I'm looking. If I'm looking here, I'm looking right at the camera. I'm looking here, I'm looking at my slide. I'm looking up there, I'm looking at questions. So if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to chat them in. The question and answer section is great, because that way Wayne, Amanda can also interact and respond there. But if you want to just chat amongst the group, I can see those as well. So as you go through, if there's anything that you're thinking of that you would like to talk through, just ask. Just chat in up there. So that said, let me talk about where this whole conversation began on hosted PRTG. Knowing who Veeya is pretty essential to this story. We support, as I mentioned, close to 10,000 users, and we do it with a variety of services that we actually run through our data center. Now, some of those services are, for instance, hosted servers, websites. I mean, we do student management systems, all that kind of stuff. But we also, in that same data center, run PRTG, both the core server. And if let me actually draw a little bit on the screen. If you know PRTG, you know you have your core server up here. And then attached to that is a bajillion little probes. And so you have your customer sites down here. And we're a managed service provider, so we have many different customers. And at each one of those sites, it could be PRTG is based on Windows, so it could be somebody's desktop, which we really don't prefer. We usually install one of those little Intel Nook devices, the little, small little things. Just throw it in the server room. And that's the hosted PRTG probe, which manages all of the sensors at that location and reports it back to the core server. So at our same data center that hosts that PRTG core server right there, we also run internet, meaning we feed the internet. We call it VISP, the Veeya Internet Service Provider. So we can actually do internet with quality of service for phones and all that kind of stuff. So I'm framing all this way so you get the impact of this story. So I was just talking to Amanda and Wayne before this. I actually do have 7 kids, ages 14 and under. So it was the weekend. I'm out at a park with them. We're throwing the baseball. It's like one of those made for TV movies. We're all smiling. Bunny rabbits are bouncing. Dogs are barking. It's good. We're playing around. My cell phone rings, and it's one of our techs. One of our customers called. Everything is down. Now I'm sitting there, baseball in hand, listening to cell phone. And I go, if you're technical, which I'm assuming many people on this call are, what's the first question you ask when you hear that? Everything is down. What do you mean everything is down? Like, I need to compute. Thank you, Ford. What do you mean? What is everything? What do you mean by everything? In the response, everything, literally everything. And it's that feeling you get. Every technology person knows this. You like have the dream job, and then suddenly that like, oh my gosh, like you go pale, your mouth goes dry. That like, oh my gosh, this like I just want to run right now. Like, what do you? So okay, clarify for me. And the next question on just like Ford said, what is everything? Okay, pull up PRTG. What do you see? PRTG is down. That's what I'm telling you. We can't get to it. So long story short, this beautiful time with my family. This is me. As I'm sprinting from the field. Hey, hun, we had one car. I'm like, we got to go. Let's load up the kid. I'm grabbing. Tell me what's going. So drive home. Long story short, I'm talking to the tech on the way. I'm like, okay, explain. Long story short, we actually had an outage that was very minor. But PRTG froze at the same time, meaning our core server, which was hosted in the data center, running on Windows, it's great, supporting about 7,000 sensors that we're monitoring, did a Windows update. Thanks, Windows. And as it came up, everything locked. So when we got a call from the customer and they said, hey, our internet is down, which was due to a service outage in that area, our engineer pulled up PRTG. PRTG is down as well. And those of you know, when you start relying on things like PRTG, you're blind as a bat. You're like your IP addresses. What do I ping? Like, what do I do? You go into panic. And that's when you start making dumb statements like this. Like everything is down. It's just a reaction to like, I can't see anything. Customer called, they're down. I'm assuming it's all down. Thanks be to God. By the time I got there, it's like, okay, I'm able to ping a few things. I think, hang on, we can get to the DRAC card. It was one of those things where we're like, okay, got it. But that led to a whole, as you might imagine, that led to a whole bunch of follow-up meetings where we got to discuss, okay, let's first off clarify everything is down and how do we keep this from ever happening again? That's where the conversation started. And when we have those kinds of conversations, we go into cost calculation mode, meaning, okay, do we need 2 PRTG servers? Because obviously if our core server freezes, that's not good. We can't have everything. We can't go blind. Do we need two core servers? Okay. Where we went into that mode is time and materials. This is where the same way most of you think. Okay, how much time is it going to take? We got to figure out how to do this 2 server thing. Is there a load balancing? What's the licensing look like? As we start getting into the materials, like, okay, what about, do we have to upgrade our servers? Why did they freeze? Was it a memory? Was it a CPU? And let me add to that story. And some of you know, if you're using PRTG, once it boots up, it takes time, sometimes a lot of time for all the sensors to show back up, all the probes to check back in, because it can be massive. You have a massive database monitoring 7,000 things into one server that are constantly going every 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It's a ton of stuff. So we have to think how much hardware, but not just hardware, like how much memory is that going to take? How much CPU? What does Passler recommend on how to scale this server? How much is going to be the implementation? What is the maintenance and support? Like we were doing this formula, and then somebody said, they're like, what about hosted PRTG? Me, as the business owner, as a techie guy, when I heard that, I'm like, I don't like it. Why? Because I think about time. I think about materials. We're already in the data center. We already have servers, lots of them. They have resources. We already have the license for PRTG. This doesn't make sense to me. So you're saying we would convert to hosted PRTG? And I'm summing up a whole bunch of the conversation that led to this decision. And this is where we started figuring out a third thing. There's a third thing that you need to think about when you're thinking about cost. And I'm talking beyond just PRTG. I'm talking world as we know it. It's the cost of focus. Meaning, this is something you can't quite quantify. But when you start adding more and more things to the technical team's plate, you begin paying the price in terms of focus. You can't say, well, how much time did that take you? How much materials did that take you? Because there's a price you pay that you can't quite quantify every single time you say, okay, switch from this to this. Okay, switch from this to this. And for me, I think about PRTG. I'm like, oh, well, it wasn't a problem. Well, it wasn't a problem until that Saturday where I was at the park with my kids. And there was a price to pay. There was not just a price of like, there goes my weekend, but there's a relational price with my wife, my kids. There's a cost of like, okay, we've got to have follow-up meetings after that. It's a cost of focus, which means we diverted our focus from what we do best, what we're really good at, into something else. And when we look at our data center, now this isn't the only focus we have at Veeya, but our primary data center focus, our skill set, what we are really good at is what I would call core Windows and Linux knowledge. We can do the core of it. We know Windows updates. We know how to manage servers. We know how to scale servers, things like that. That's core based knowledge. And you might say, well, isn't that all you need for PRTG? That's where we started going into the specialty services. And it was very similar with Ubiquity. Now, some of you know Ubiquity Networking. We use Ubiquity at a lot of our customers. It's a great platform because it's really cheap and it's pretty darn good. And so we have a massive controller at our data center that runs on Linux and supported thousands of wireless access points, literally thousands of them reporting in the server. Core Linux knowledge. It's like, well, that's it. Well, we started getting to the point where upgrades on that server would need a ton of testing and vetting and things like that. And we did an upgrade and actually took out a whole bunch of our customers because we didn't upgrade it there was a bug in the firmware and we're like, okay. This is now moving into a specialty service. And so we used a company called Hostify, which all they do, this is the only thing they do. All they do is a Ubiquity controller. It's a hosted Ubiquity controller. They do the upgrades. They do the patching. Yes, it is core Linux knowledge, but there's stuff that needs to be maintained with that. And if you think about it, they just built an entire company out of doing nothing but hosting a Ubiquity controller. And that's it. That's all it does. So we started looking at PRTG and we said, okay, has this moved into specialty knowledge? And as the discussion went, yeah, it kind of has. Because yes, we can maintain Windows servers, but we ran into an issue with our PRTG core server where stuff started graying out at random times during the day. And we're like, why did that happen? It all, it set off the alarms and we're going, oh, things are down. Oh, no. It's just PRTG server got overwhelmed. Is it a resource thing? We pull up VMware, memory is fine, CPU is fine. Is it a disk IO thing? Is it a database? What? Specialty knowledge takes specialty focus. If there's one thing you want to make sure is always right, it's monitoring. Seeing everything go red and then back and going, oh, it's just a false alarm. That doesn't fly. So that started leading us down the road into why we wanted to do Hosted PRTG. First and foremost, it became a strategic approach for our company. We want to focus on what we do well. What do we do well? We support charter schools and everything around that. We do all the cabling for charter schools. We do voice over IP for charter schools. We do Office 365 or Google Workspace for charter schools. That's what we do well. We don't focus on PRTG, database scaling, sizing, things like that. It's a specialty focus. So we started thinking, okay, with Hosted PRTG, we have a pre-scaled server, meaning if you look at the platforms, you get to choose how many sensors do you want, and you can actually upgrade and downgrade how many. Like for example, and I know some of you know this. When you set up devices in PRTG, there's the right way and there's the lazy way. The right way is you add the device and then you add sensor by sensor, either from a template or by actually adding the sensors that you need to that device. The lazy way is to right click on the device and hit auto discover. And it can discover anywhere from 1 to 1,000 sensors for that device that you may or may not ever need. And so when it comes to licensing, that's one of the things I'm constantly telling our team is, guys, we've got to trim down the sensors to what we really use. Don't just monitor to monitor or use auto discover to fill up the thing. Use what you use. So as we become more efficient, we can actually downgrade licenses with Hosted PRTG. We can move server sizes. So that core server being pre-scaled is a big deal. The second thing is more supportable. What I mean by that is in the past, and you guys have probably run into this when you open a case with Passler, let's say something's going wrong. Oh, all our sensors just turned gray and came back. What happened? Passler is going to jump on, and the first thing they're going to say is, what are you running on your server? Is it, does it have the right CPU? Is it right disk IO? A ton of stuff that they're going to go down the road of investigation. And that's going to take time, a ton of time for you to, because they're probably like, hey, our software's fine. We know our software works well. We test it. So it must be something on your server. And the ability to just say, you know what, that's yours too. If it's a server problem, if it's a software problem, it's yours. Passler, figure it out. There's something great, and they will do end to end. Those, by the way, are the two biggest reasons. Of course, our engineers are all sitting around the table like, yeah, that's it. Of course, completely numb to cost. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to figure that out. Done, sold. What else? Probes are dropping. And what I mean by that is, you might say, well, what about the probes that land on there? Probes, if you've done PRTG, they're easy. You simply drop them in at whatever customer site, and the reporting on those is very simple. You'll know quick if the probe is having a scaling issue because just that probe will be having issues. Much easier to troubleshooting, much easier to troubleshoot, much more in line with exactly what we do well, right? Backups done for you. One of those I can't sleep at night moments is when you think about those 7,000 sensors all going away and how much time it took to build that massive database and the historical functions of that. With Hosted PRTG, it's all hosted on AWS. So as soon as you think that's the mindset that you should be thinking. Okay, well, with AWS, you open up all the AWS tools like snapshot backups. I think they do it like once an hour. For every 24 hours, there's once an hour backup. Kyle typed in a quick question. He said, please speak on how you send the message and get buy-in from your employees that it's a false, great question. Thank you, Kyle. Great question on how do you get buy-in? So let me go back to the story where I was saying, things go gray and everyone's like, oh, it's a false alarm. Don't worry about it, right? How do you get buy-in from your employees that is not going to fly? That's not okay to have those false alarms. I will speak, Wayne. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. I'll speak from Veeya's side. From Veeya's side, what you start realizing, and the team starts knowing this, the team begins to go numb to the alarms. If false alarms are okay, if it's like, oh, it all just went red, it'll come back, don't worry about it. That means that when you get those bings on your cell phone, they can't be trusted. When you get those alerts popping up on the desktop, it's like, oh, it's just one more it might as well be a Slack notification. It's just one more chat, So you're going to miss critical alarms and call it critical outages. Now, part of that has to be, Kyle, speaking to you, has to be your management team and your executive team buying in on that. At Veeya, one of the things that's not okay is if our customer calls in, letting us know that they're down before we have already called them, telling them about it, right? If they call in, that means that they're immediately going to have the same question of like, why are we paying these guys again? What do they do? Wayne, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point to raise, is that one thing we come across at PRTG is that every customer's installation is different. So what's okay for one customer is not okay for another customer. So with PRTG, what we offer is the ability to teach it. So you want to teach PRTG what's acceptable in your environment. In some environment, they might want to be notified 14 days before SSL certificates expire, where in other days, they want to know only 7 days. So it depends. So with PRTG, it's all very configurable. So you can configure it to be notified and alerted when you want to notify. And that's one of the things I like to talk to customers about is teach it. You need to teach it for what's okay in your environment so you avoid those false alarms.
Good. Kyle, hopefully, thanks for the question. That was great. Other reasons. It fits the MSP model. So one of the beauties, and I'm going to show this to you in just a second. One of the beauties about hosted PRTG is the ability to spin up instances. Again, it's based on AWS. It's scripted. Need a new instance? Oh, got a new customer. Feel free to spin it up. One of the things that we've stepped into is this model that we call co-managed. As you might imagine, as we step into a lot of the schools, the on-staff IT is like, that's it. It's like pen in the air, done. There goes my job. The MSP's here, all that kind of stuff. And we're like, no. We want to have a co-managed relationship. Let us run a lot of the back-end tools. You just, we'll set it up. We'll get it humming along for you. You just get the notifications. I just threw my pen. So with this hosted model, it allows us to just say, hey, we'll spin up an instance. We'll get it configured for you. There you go. Spin up another instance, get it configured. There you go. So it fit our model well. Upgrade, downgrade license. I talked about that. And perfected upgrades. I talked to, they're all German names. I can't remember it right now. It's like, I want to say Yahweh, but that's like the name of God. Who, say it again? Gerhard, that's it. Who manages a lot of the hosted PRTG stuff at AWS. He walked me through. He's like, okay, what we've done. He goes, check this out. We've split PRTG into 2 different volumes. The C partition, system drive, right, and the database, and all the custom stuff that you might want to add to it, and all that. They're on different volumes. When we do an upgrade, literally, it's a rip and replace. We rip off the data partition, including the core PRTG package and things like that, and literally replace it with the new volume. Your data is kept over here on a separate volume, right? So when PRTG does an upgrade, it's not like you and I do an upgrade, which can be problematic. Downloading the package, next, finish. Please come back, please. Okay, there, it survived. It's literally like your data is kept over here. They rip off the executables, if you will, the system and executable, and replace it with a fully updated, patch tested Windows instance. We don't have, that's not specialty systems require specialty focus. That's not what we do. We're not going to script PRTG installations the way that Passler can. So that was a big deal. And one of the great things he mentioned, he goes, by the way, with hosted PRTG, if you don't like an upgrade, maybe it messes up some sensors for you, you can downgrade. You can just rip off the OS and put it back to the old version. We do that too. So those were like, okay, cool idea. Now I've got to be completely transparent with you. Why not hosted PRTG? What's the drawback? Why is the tree on fire? I was like, tree of life, tree on fire. Why would we not go with hosted PRTG? 2 reasons that we saw. And I would say the biggest one is this, and this is something that Passler is still working out. An unknown upgrade schedule within the maintenance window. Here's what that means. Passler, when you go with hosted PRTG, you will select a maintenance window, right? Of like, okay, that is when PRTG can be down and upgraded, things like that. That's when Passler will do all of those upgrades, but it's a script that fires off and all of their hosted instance just kind of go in whatever order the script is running. Okay, that one first, that one first, that one first. So you'll have a maintenance window that you get to choose. And then within that window, it'll happen sometime. So we were kind of like, is that a big deal? Well, the good news for us is that almost all of our customers are gone in the late night hours for us, which ironically, great news, is when Germany is awake. It's almost a complete time shift for that. So they're alive and well, and they can do those upgrades for us. And the window was small enough that we were saying, okay, we can make that work. So that was something that was noteworthy. The other one is with Hosted PRTG, for obvious reasons, you and I don't have access to the core operating system anymore. That's now behind the scenes. It's all hidden by a web interface, which I'm going to show you in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. So that means that custom sensors, templates, things I would just drop into the folder on the core server, I now have to coordinate with Passler, which not a big deal. Actually, probably less of a big deal, because I can just say, it's almost like you get a whole team. It's like, do this. I want this, instead of you having to configure it all themselves. And they do that, and they make sure it survives all the upgrades and things like that. So let me show you this. I'm gonna grab, I have it somewhere around here. This is right here. This is literally how simple it is to set up Hosted PRTG. You go to this website, start a free trial. You can use, integrated credentials, when I say like single sign-on, Google, Amazon. I'll use my Microsoft account. Please agree to the terms of service. Yes, I agree. Set up with Microsoft account, comes up and tells me, oh wait, hang on. Oh, I already did it. It went through already. So I called it moo.myprtg.com. So it literally will ask you through, like, what do you want to name your instance? It finds a unique name for this. What time zone are you in? And you select this. Where do you want this hosted? I chose the United States region. Right now it's a 10-day trial, but this is where you can choose. I mean, this actually gives you a good perspective of the options you're given when you sign up for a Hosted PRTG. But you can, with the 10-day trial, you get the free 500 sensor limit. So it's literally like fill in some info, no credit card required, start, and bam, within, I would say 5-10 minutes, you've got your own hosted instance of PRTG. And let me show you what that looks like. So I installed PRTG desktop. This is my house. I called it kits, keeping IT simple. So in my house, I have a little probe that I ran. I set it up on Proxmox, which is a fun virtualization platform for free if you ever want that. And then on there, I went and set up all my, I go a little crazy with my access points. So I have, 6 different WAPs at my house, but I've got monitoring set up on all of those. I set up all of the traffic monitoring, CPU uptime. All of this is being hosted from a server in Virginia, which is where I spun this one up to. You can see all the stats of the server right here, but that's the beauty is I don't care. It just becomes something that Passler is now handling behind the scenes. I know it's going to scale, and I know it's going to support however many sensors that I've added to it. So it's very simple on how to do that. So so grab a hosted PRTG instance, kick the tires, play around with it. It's that easy. So I want to open it up for questions. I also put my little Christmas tree. Merry Christmas. It's December. I want to open up for any questions that you guys have. And you know what? Tell you what, we can do it live. If you want to raise your hand in Zoom, however you do that, I'm assuming that's there. If you want to chat it in, feel free to chat in questions. And I want to open it up to anything you want to talk about that's monitoring related. Could be, MSP related. It could be supporting customer related. I'll open it up to anything that it just spurred a thought in your mind going through this. Couple things I want to call out in the chat while I'm waiting for those. First off, Amanda chatted in notification fatigue. That's good. Wayne, do you have any thoughts on that? Because as you monitor environments, notifications are a thing. And the more of those that fire, this goes back to Kyle's question, the more numb people can become to them. How does Passler, do you have a recommendation on how to handle notification madness?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. There's actually a couple places. understanding notifications in PRTG is really like a multi-part process. First, there's your default notification trigger. This is a state trigger that's set up at the root object. There in PRTG, you can configure how sensitive that is, like how many down cycles or how many intervals you're monitoring that it has to fail before it generates an alert. And then also in the notification template, there's the notification summarization method. What I like to do is send the first down and up message as soon as possible, then summarize the rest. And then lastly, in the device itself, there are scanning intervals that you can set in the device. So when I was a consultant and had a PRTG instance, I had monitored lots of Macs with SNMP. And we did not want to be alerted whenever those things went down because someone couldn't print, so they chose to reboot. So I set those Macs to be monitored for a 60-second interval, but then not to create an alert until after 5 intervals to give them time to reboot their machine. So there's 3 different places to play with that in PRTG, so you can, quiet the alert storms and get the notification summarizations. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that when you do configure PRTG to summarize, you need to read the whole list of what's in the summary. So for example, say you're monitoring printers and someone leaves at the end of the day and turns off a printer, and maybe the way you chose to configure things, that generates an alert. But then your server goes down after that. Well, then the alert that's going to come out is going to show the printer. The alerts will be for the printer because that went down first. And then your server and other critical infrastructure might be listed in the summary. So what's important to notice, if you do choose to do notification summarization, make sure to read everything that's in the list.
I'd also add to that, and I want to get to John's question as well. I'll add to that from an MSP perspective, which again, what we do is we help customers do their IT. We either do it all for them, we are their IT department, or we assist an IT department. A lot of it is tied to the SLA, meaning during the day, we have I think it's a 15-minute SLA. We will begin responding to things within 15 minutes. That can guide a lot of our notifications, but in the after hours, we have a much longer SLA. So we can tune, and we have tuned many of our sensors that, hey, just similar to what Wayne was saying, don't alert us until this number of intervals or this amount of time has passed. But because what we found is in the after hours, a lot of carriers do maintenance as well. And they may take you down for 10 minutes and you may not want to be alerted at after hours carrier maintenance. John is saying, can quality of service be monitored effectively using PRTG? Is there any special templates? And yes, we do that all the time. There's actually a specific sensor, I think it's QoS round trip is what we use, where, Wayne, perfect, you're nodding, where, I mean, since we do, like I said, we are an ISP, we do that so we can prioritize quality of service for our voice customers, voice over IP. So we have a probe on site that will test the round trip of QoS. So it's literally from the on-site probe to a probe at the data center. And so those two, every X number of seconds, 60 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever, send a flurry of pings back and forth and measure the round trip time. Also, Wayne, you were responding to how many max sensors the data center can handle. You want to call that out for everybody?
Yeah, so who was it? John Oho, I hope I got your name right. He was asking also what's the max number of sensors, devices in a data center, for example, an instance of PRTG can handle. With PRTG hosted, that would be around 1,000 devices if we assume an average of 10 sensors per device. Now, for some folks, if they're paying only, if they just concerned with up-down per device, then that would be 10,000 devices if they're just paying only. But if you want to monitor things like CPU utilization, SNMP traffic, bandwidth, SSL certificates, and things like that, then we typically assume an average of 10 sensors per device. So a PRTG hosted instance with 10,000 sensors would allow you to cover around 1,000 devices.
Excellent, good. And I want to take Kyle's mindset as well. And it's not, Kyle, it sounds like you are using PRTG and you've run into that. And his question is there any kind, so first off, Wayne, I'll let you speak to is it a future roadmap to have clustered probes that are redundant? But what I can tell you, so the mindset of what Kyle is asking is, how do you make sure that if your probe goes down at the remote site, you can still have some critical functions measured? I can speak to how we handle that because we ran into the same thing. We when we see something go red, we go, okay, did the probe go down or is the site literally down? So we would set up resiliency between two different locations. So at our data center, we would have a set of sensors configured that would test some of the key things like internet connectivity and some of the scripted functions that would run at the site, that if the probe went down, we're like, we can't miss those. So anything that's like, it's got to be up, it's got to be all the time, we'd run it from the data center. For stuff that's just like, hey, how's the switch CPU, everything else, we would run that from the remote probe. So we found a way to build redundancy using multiple probes, monitoring different sets of things. Wayne, any thoughts on probe clustering?
So I'm not aware of clustered probes being on the roadmap, but we do offer some new advances that are coming out. With our latest release of PRTG, we're now supporting running probes on Linux. We all know that Linux does a little bit better job of updates than Windows does. They can stream them in sometimes without even rebooting the operating system. So please check out our public roadmap for the next probe, which is our new multi-platform probe. And Linux, I think, is going to be a choice there for some of those folks that want to have more uptime. The other option is just to have two probes inside the environment, but of course that would result in double the number of sensors and double monitoring. So that would be the other option.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm looking, I'm not seeing any other questions. So last chance, if anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand, chat it in. John is saying, how chatty would this be for a data center in terms of state within a data center? And I'm assuming you're talking about splitting the probe functions. It's actually not too bad. And especially bandwidth nowadays is like, I was going to say water, but that's scarce in many places. It's just, it's plentiful. It's like coffee. There's lots of it all over the place. And so we have not, to your point, it's the chattiness over the internet connectivity or over the VPN to reach the site. Not even something I'm not going to say we don't think about it, but it's so insignificant we don't even factor it in.
Jeremy's absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
Kilobits per second. You have to have a lot of devices even to get up to megabits per second for the monitoring traffic.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, I want to respect your time, and it looks like we're out of questions. So, guys, if you have anything else, and matter of fact, I can I'll share the screen one more time, which is somewhere around here, where we can see ourselves. There we go. Sorry, I've got all my windows tiled on each other. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Obviously, Wayne, Amanda, they are also at your disposal. You can reach them through Passler's website or just Google them. They're famous. You should be able to find their contact information just about everywhere. But for the rest of you, it's December. Have a Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you before then. Thanks for the time, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.